The desert wind cut across the canyon like a whisper from another world as the cowboy slowed his horse. He had been riding since sunrise. Following a sound he first thought was the cry of a wounded animal. But as he drew closer, he saw a small figure crouched beside a cluster of rocks. A little Apache girl sat there, her knees pulled to her chest, dust covering her torn dress, her dark eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. She could not have been more than 8 years old. When the horse shifted, she flinched, ready to run, but her legs were too weak. The cowboy dismounted slowly, careful not to startle her. He had lived alone for years, a man shaped by silence and loss. Children were not part of his world. Still, something in the girl's stare stopped him cold. She did not beg or cry. She only watched him, proud even in her weakness. He offered her water. At first she refused, then drank greedily, her hands shaking. When he wrapped his coat around her shoulders, she hesitated, then accepted it as if she had no other choice left. He lifted her onto his horse and rode back toward his ranch as the sun dipped low. Along the way, she finally whispered her name, Nia. She said nothing else. No tribe, no father, only that her mother was gone. The words were spoken without tears, as if she had already cried them dry long ago. By the time they reached the cabin, she had fallen asleep against his chest. Life at the ranch slowly changed. The cowboy cooked smaller meals, spoke more words, and learned to wake before dawn to quiet nightmares he did not understand. Nia followed him like a shadow, watching everything, learning quickly. She smiled for the first time when he tried to pronounce Apache, words and failed terribly. At night, she stared into the fire as if searching for memories hiding in the flames. One evening, a passing trader stopped for water and froze when he saw the girl. He studied her face carefully, then shook his head in disbelief. He said she looked just like an Apache widow named Lucia, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, believed dead after a raid years ago. The cowboy felt the air grow heavy around him. If the woman was alive, then the child he had taken in was not just lost. She belonged to a story far bigger than either of them knew. The trader's words stayed with the cowboy long after the man rode away. That night, as the fire burned low, he watched Nia sleeping on the narrow bed he had built for her. Her face was calm in rest, but even then she looked ready to flee, as if the world had taught her never to feel safe for long. If her mother truly lived, the child deserved to be returned, no matter how much the thought unsettled him. By morning, he had decided, they would ride east toward Apache land. The journey was slow and tense. Nia grew quiet as the land changed, her small hands gripping the saddle when distant drums echoed across the plains. She spoke in fragments now, of riding behind her mother, of long black hair flowing in the wind, of songs sung at night to keep fear away. Then her voice would fade and she would stare ahead, lost in memories too painful to finish. The cowboy listened without pressing, realizing how little a child could carry and still survive. On the third day, they were surrounded by Apache scouts. Arrows were drawn, horses snorted, and the air vibrated with danger. The cowboy raised his hands and stepped in front of Nia, refusing to reach for his rifle. He said he had found the girl alone in the desert and had kept her alive. Nothing more. One of the warriors moved closer, studying Nia's face with sharp, searching eyes. Suddenly his expression changed. He spoke a name softly with respect and lowered his weapon. They were taken to a hidden village nestled between red cliffs. Whispers followed them as they passed. Women stared openly at Nia, and elders leaned forward as if seeing a ghost. Then a woman stepped out from one of the lodges. She was tall and striking, her beauty undimmed by hardship, sorrow resting behind her eyes. When her gaze fell on the girl, her breath caught. Nia froze, then ran forward. "Mother!" she cried. The woman dropped to her knees, pulling Nia into her arms, tears streaming down her face. Lucia lived. She had believed her daughter dead after an attack scattered their people. The village watched in silence as a family was restored. When Lucia finally looked at the cowboy, her expression was guarded but grateful. She listened as the elders explained how he had cared for the child without asking for reward. That night Lucia thanked him quietly. She said he had done what many would not, The cowboy nodded, unsure of his place now. He had brought Nia home, but in doing so, he had stepped into a world that might never let him leave unchanged. The days that followed were uneasy ones. Though the village welcomed Nia home, not every heart trusted the white cowboy who had brought her. Some warriors watched him closely, their eyes cold, their hands never far from their weapons. Whispers moved through the lodges like smoke, questioning his intentions and his growing presence beside 𝙤𝙤𝙤. She felt it too, the weight of judgment pressing against her every step. Yet she refused to turn away from the man who had saved her child. The cowboy stayed quiet, helping where he could, repairing broken fences, hunting game, and sharing food without complaint. He did not speak of leaving, though he sensed that his time there balanced on a fragile edge. Nia, however, clung to him openly, pulling him toward the river, laughing as if the fear that once haunted her had finally loosened its grip. Watching them together stirred something deep in Lucia's chest, a warmth she had buried with her husband years ago. Trouble came at dawn. Riders appeared on the horizon, not Apache, not friendly. Raiders swept down on the village, shouting, firing, turning calm into chaos. The cowboy moved without thinking, grabbing his rifle and standing shoulder to shoulder with the Apache warriors. He fought fiercely, not for land or pride, but for the people who had taken him in. When one raider broke through the defenses and headed straight for the children, Lucia screamed. Nia stumbled as she tried to run. The cowboy reached her just as a blade flashed in the morning light. He pulled her back, placing himself between the child and death. The fight ended moments later, the attackers driven off, leaving dust and silence behind. Blood stained the ground, and the village stood still, absorbing what had nearly been lost. That night the elders gathered. They spoke of courage, of debt, and of blood shared in defense of the tribe. The cowboy was no longer a stranger. He had earned a place through action, not words. 𝙤𝙤𝙤 sat beside him under the stars, her voice soft as she thanked him. She admitted that since her husband's death, she had sworn her heart closed forever, yet fate had tested that vow. The cowboy confessed he had planned to ride on once Nia was safe, but now the idea felt empty. Above them the stars burned bright, and between them grew a bond neither fear nor tradition could easily break. The threat did not end with the raiders. Scouts soon returned with grim news that U.S. cavalry patrols were moving through the region, burning villages and forcing Apache families to flee. Fear settled over the camp like a dark cloud. Children were hidden, supplies packed, and warriors prepared for a fight they knew could cost them everything. 𝙤𝙤𝙤 stood strong, but the memory of losing her husband still haunted her. She would not lose her daughter again. The cowboy listened quietly as the elders debated. He understood the soldiers, their ways, their rules, and he knew that if the cavalry found this village, there would be no mercy. That night, while the camp slept, he saddled his horse and rode out alone toward the rising dust on the horizon. He met the soldiers at first light, claiming the land ahead was empty and the trails old. He spoke with confidence, even anger, and warned them of hostile terrain and pointless bloodshed. His reputation as a hardened frontiersman carried weight, and after tense hours, the patrol turned away. When he returned, the village greeted him with silence that quickly broke into low voices of awe. The elders saw clearly now. This man had risked his life not for reward, but for family. Under the wide desert moon, a gathering was called. Drums sounded softly as tradition took shape. 𝙤𝙤𝙤 stepped forward, her posture proud, her grief finally eased by hope. She thanked the cowboy before all, calling him protector and friend. Nia took his hand and placed it into her mother's. In that simple gesture, the choice was made. The cowboy did not ask to belong, but he was offered a place all the same. He accepted Apache ways, Apache vows, and Apache responsibility. Their union was not born of conquest or bargain, but of trust forged in loss and courage. As the firelight danced around them, the cowboy realized he had found more than a home. He had become a husband to a woman who carried both strength and sorrow, and a father to a child who had once been alone in the desert. The past that haunted them did not vanish, but it no longer ruled their future. In the harsh land of the Wild West, where survival often demanded cruelty, they chose something rarer, They chose family, and in doing so they turned a story of loss into one of belonging that would be remembered long after the dust had settled.